Alrighty. Headed home tomorrow is a Donza, so it is the day off work. I do not get those though, so I will be there, but luckily I already work over 40 hours a week, so I will be there for a shorter time period tomorrow, probably done with my day at like noon. Get to train early and then be done with my day early as well. My competitors, my best sappers, they kick off their competition tomorrow night at 1800, so 6 p.m. Eastern, for their first event. And I did the math over Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning. They are hitting roughly, we're all sorts of off angle there. They're hitting roughly 80 miles in that 3 day period. So it's going to be a shit ton. So they get to kick that off. So my entire weekend will be spent watching YouTube Live and FaceTiming First Sergeant and other people who were up there. So it's going to be a very exciting weekend. Hitting up the Costco after that. Next weekend, super light. Then the next Friday following that, May 3rd, I will be driving down to, I forgot what the city is. It's like an hour north of Gainesville for the Florida Weightlifting State Championship. So got to go down there to support Bernie, help her as she competes. And then we are just rolling into honeymoon and nationals after that. So we got really actually not a lot coming up on the calendar. We typically have a lot more things going back and forth on the calendar, and I'm just having to constantly keep adjusting this camera screen here. It is all fucked up today. It's hot here, so my little doohickey that suctions onto my window broke off the second that I put it on. So we're kind of just dealing with that right now until we get to our flat interstate grounds. But theme of today is that training landing mechanics is a complete waste of time and will not do a single thing. So when I say landing mechanics, that is a lot more strength conditioning. However, as weightlifters, you should be doing plyometrics, so then this also will apply to you. So when we think of landing mechanics, we think of things like snapdowns and practicing our landing, trying to be as soft as possible, landing like as picture perfect as we can. Again, snapdowns are typically what people will use to teach those landing mechanics. The issue with that is you can do an infinite amount of snapdowns, like picture perfect technique. You're doing hundreds a day leading up to your event, your game, your competition, whatever. The thing is, when you are doing snapdowns, you are in a very, very, very hyper-controlled environment where you can hone in, you can slow down, you can be as particular as possible. Our actual game, our actual sport, is the exact opposite. There is not a single thing that is controlled about a sport. So this is going to connect best with basketball. Or even football too, but basketball you're jumping quite a lot more, or volleyball even too. You can land that picture perfect way. If you know exactly where the ball is going each time, you know exactly where everyone on the court's going, you know every single factor, but that's not how sport plays out. So there's going to be times where, oh shit, the ball's going over this way, I need to jump, leap, and I need to land on one foot just so I don't fall on my face or break an ankle. So because of the ever-changing environment of sport, you are never going to have that super controlled environment where you can focus on your landing mechanics. Your body is going to self-organize and put itself in the position it needs to in order to meet the demand of getting the ball or doing whatever you need to do so that you can win the game. So no matter how much you practice landing mechanics, it doesn't actually transfer to the sport itself, because the sport is not controlled. The sport is an ever-changing, ever-evolving environment where your body has to constantly read, learn the situation, and react to the situation. So if we're just doing all these snapdowns, well, it's not transferring to our game because we can't predict what's going to happen in the game like that. So what are we doing? Well, we're really wasting a bunch of time. The thing with that is, if we know that athletes are going to land in a variety of different positions every time, and no athlete is ever going to land the exact same way ever. Variability is a thing. Even if you're very proficient at a movement, there will still be variability in every movement. We know that from looking at some studies. Again, I mentioned that How We Learn to Move book by Rob Gray. There's a study, Bernstein's hammer. You take novice blacksmith and expert blacksmiths. So the theory going into this was novice blacksmiths would have a lot more variability in their movement of their swing to smack down the sword or whatever they're blacksmithing. And experts would have a much more narrow window of variability, and they would have almost the exact same picture-perfect movement every single time. That was actually the complete opposite case, where novices had a lot more predictable, perfect movement every time, and the experts had a lot more variability in their movement. However, the experts hit their target every time. So the experts were experts at getting to that movement, but how their arm, how their swing self-organized was different every time. So they had variability on how they got to the solution, to the movement solution, but what they actually did to get there was variable. So they always hit their target. Their body knew how to hit the target, but because it is an ever-changing condition, the body has to move in different ways every time. So we know that experts have more variability surrounding a movement, but they are very expert at getting that movement completed however they need to. So all of our landing mechanics are going to be different every single time. So instead of just practicing a single snap down over and over that we know is not going to happen in the game, how about we train athletes to land in a variety of positions, train athletes how to produce and resist force in a variety of positions, because then, hey, you're going to practice all these snap downs, you go out on the court, you land wrong, fuck, I just got injured. Why? You never trained that position. You never trained how to be able to absorb force and react from that position. So if we instead stop focusing on doing snap downs and perfect landing mechanics, but instead we practice landing and producing force out of different positions, we may actually have a better chance of avoiding injury, because we have now trained those quote-unquote dangerous positions. We've trained those positions, and now we can better, as the athletes, produce, absorb, and reproduce force from these varying positions. Now, if we look at that in the weightlifting context, again, you're doing plyometrics, but also, again, note, there is variability in every movement. Even at the most top-level Olympic gold medalists, their snatch, not every rep looks the same. There is difference in all of them. Looking at their clean and jerk, same exact thing. So there is variability in movement. So how we land in that squat is going to be slightly different every time. So maybe we should train a little bit differently. Maybe we should add some variation to training that forces the athlete to move a little bit differently, whether that be forcing them to go a little bit faster under the bar, whether that be forcing them not to jump forward or jump back, whether that be lengthening the pull, slowing down the pull, changing up some variable so that each rep or each day, each week, whatever, each month, whatever, we are practicing receiving that barbell in a slightly different position, because that is how the real world actually works. That is how competition works. You will be receiving the barbell in a different position every single time. You'll make the lift, but how you make it is going to be slightly varied every time. So that's where that thing is. Like when you are a novice, you have a shit ton of things wrong. And you do it wrong every time. That doesn't change too much when you become an expert. Is you still have some things to work on. You just have a lot less errors, but you're still having that variability movement to movement. And this thing keeps falling. This is really fucking annoying. So instead of hyper-focusing on landing mechanics, we need to do a better job of training landing and reproduction of force in varying positions to actually match what our sport is going to look like.